I've been tasked with presenting on NBA analytics, which is a little bit of a passion of mine. Just to give you a little bit of reference, my first job in the NBA was with the Houston Rockets and Daryl Morey. So any of you guys that are gals that watch the NBA and know anything about Daryl Morey, Daryl is all about playing a certain type of basketball. It's how many times we get the rim, how many threes can we make, is how he wants to play. And then my first real coaching stint was under Mike D'Antoni, also in Houston. And so Mike D'Antoni, he was in Phoenix. He kind of reinvented what modern NBA basketball looks like. 7 seconds or less. How fast can we play? How many threes can we get up? How many points can we score? Is really what his philosophy was. So that's kind of how I grew up. In college, when I was a manager, I was more traditional basketball. That's all I knew of what basketball used to look like. And then when I got to Houston, it just opened my eyes. I was like, okay. At first, I thought they were crazy, but then quickly, I thought everyone else was crazy. And this is what I believe in now. It's how I believe basketball should be played. And you're going to see throughout this presentation, this is where basketball is heading. Because right now, just to open up to you guys in the room, the kids, when you watch an NBA game, what do you see? What are they shooting? Threes, right? It's a bunch of threes, right? I think everyone agrees with that. But there's a reason why they're shooting a bunch of threes, right? It's not just accident. It's not because it looks cool. It's not just because Steph Curry does it. It's not because James Harden does it. There's a reason teams are shooting all these threes. And we're going to go through it here. There's going to be a lot of math, I know, which is not a great fun thing for you guys, but just ask questions if you have it. So you can see on the screen, this is kind of the three-point revolution. So if you look 10 years ago, in 13-14, you look at total threes per game. Teams were averaging 21 threes per game, basically 10 years ago. You fast forward to this season, teams are shooting 34 threes a game, right? It's quite a bit more. If you look at the rim 10 years ago, 20 a game. This year, 22 a game. It hasn't changed much, right? Not a lot of difference in the rim, but the threes have gone up a lot. So if the threes go up, rim stays the same, well, something has to go down, right? Something has to go down. And so you look at the non-paint twos, and what a non-paint two is, that's your mid-range, right? That's the mid-range shot. So that's your elbow pull-ups. Anything in that range that's not a three, but it's not inside the paint, that's considered a non-paint two, which is commonly referred to as the mid-range. So you can see 10 years ago, teams were shooting more mid-range than they were threes. Now this year, mid-range shots are down to 12 per game around the whole NBA. Okay, so that's where the differences come from. Teams have stopped taking mid-range and just added more three-point shots to it. But what people get confused by is it's still about efficiency. How efficient can you be? Okay? And as we go through this, you're going to see why the three-point shot is more efficient. But first, let's do a little thought experiment. So I'll leave this open to all of our players here. So you're playing a game to 100. Okay, you're playing a game to 100. Kevin Durant is shooting only mid-range shots, and Terrence Mann is shooting only threes. Who gets to 100 first? Kevin Durant?
Oh, I know.
A lot of Kevin Durant? Terrence Mann. Okay, for those of you who said Kevin Durant, why?
He makes more shots.
He's one of the best mid-range shooters, right? Right? Okay. Okay, so you look, right? Terrence Mann is an average three-point shooter. What did Ben say's average? You guys remember? 35%. Okay, good job. Good paying attention. So Terrence Mann is basically average from three. And I think everyone in this room would agree Kevin Durant is maybe the best ever in the mid-range. Okay? He's at least top 5. Right? He's at least top 5. But that's the value of the three-point shot, is that even though Terrence Mann is average and Kevin Durant's maybe the best, it still works out to be more in favor to shoot more threes. Okay? Next one. Chris Paul from the mid-range or Luka from three? Luka? Chris? Luka? Okay. So we're pretty split. Chris Paul. Okay, so Chris in this case, right? Chris in this case is more efficient, right, than Luka from three, because Luka doesn't shoot a great percentage. Even though I think everyone in this room would consider Luka a great shooter, right? But in this instance, Chris is better when he takes a mid-range shot, right? Because it comes down to efficiency, right? It's all about the most efficient shots on the floor. And those shots aren't equal for everybody, okay? Chris Paul shooting a mid-range shot is a lot different than, say, Cameron Payne shooting a mid-range shot on the same team, right? It's all about maximizing who is shooting those shots. So it's not to say you should never ever take this shot. It's only certain people should take this shot, right? That's where the NBA is getting to. Last one here. Klay Thompson from three or Jose Alvarado at the rim? Klay? Jose Alvarado at the rim. Jose? Okay. Jose. Okay. Does anyone have a guess why Jose? So you said it. It's a layup, right? Jose's getting a layup. So one thing I want to make very clear, the rim is always the best shot. Always. Okay? Even though when you guys watch NBA right now, you're saying, oh, only people shoot threes, they only shoot threes. The rim will always be king. And this is why. Jose Alvarado is a bad finisher at the rim. He's a bad finisher. He is way below average. I think we all agree Klay Thompson is maybe one of the best shooters ever, right? But even with those being the case, Jose getting to the rim, even though he is bad, is still better than Klay shooting that three, okay? Because the rim is always king. You're always going to score more points at the rim than anywhere else, especially over the course of a game. Now, another way to look at it. So you see the Sacramento Kings this season are averaging 1.19 points per possession. So every time they come down the floor, that's what they're getting, essentially. Okay, it's just about 1.2. To be average, to be somewhat efficient, you need to score about 1 point per shot. Okay? So 1 point per shot, what that means is you go in and you shoot 2 layups, you score once, right? That's 1 point per shot. Does that make sense? You're 50%. You're 50% from layups. Okay? So if you look at the mid-range, NBA average is 0.8 points per shot. Okay? 0.8. There are 18 players. Anybody know how many players in the NBA?
John, who's got it?
450 basically. Yeah, 450 basically. So in the entire NBA, there's only 18 players who are above 1 point per shot from the mid-range. 18 out of 450. Now, if you filter that down to how many players are allowed to shoot mid-range shots, like how many players that should be shooting it, so they shoot more than 2 a game, that goes down to 9. There's 9 players in the entire NBA that are efficient from the mid-range, right? And those are some of your best players. Those are Kevin Durant, Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Kyrie Irving, those guys, right? The superstars of the NBA. Okay, those are the most efficient from that spot. Now you go to 3-pointers, which the NBA average is 1.1 points per shot. So already the average is higher than the mid-range, okay? There are 264 out of 450 players that are above 1 point per shot. So they are efficient from 3. So you went from 9 players in the entire league to 264 are efficient from that spot, okay? So now you're seeing why more teams are taking those threes, because they're more efficient, right? If over half the league is good from there, then why would you not encourage them to shoot that shot when there's only 9 guys in the whole league that are good from the mid-range? Now, you go to the rim, NBA average is 1.5 points per shot. There are 370 players in the NBA who average over 1 point per shot there, okay? So basically the entire league. The entire league is more efficient at the rim, right, than there's 9 players that are efficient from the mid-range. Okay, so that's why you're seeing this shift. It just comes down to simple math, basically. Obviously it's a lot more complicated than that. But this is a good snapshot at it. And then this is another way to look at it. This is how the NBA looks now. Okay, so 20 years ago, all those data points are the most popular shot places in the NBA. And then you look 2 years ago, all the most important, all the most frequent shots are all threes and all rim. Okay, and it's for the reasons that we just explained. Right? So it's teams are realizing certain shots are more efficient, and then how do we maximize the right people are taking those shots? Any questions? Any questions on the 3-point revolution? Yeah. Where you at? Dark orange are the most shot, right? So it's the wings, right? It's the same 5 space spots that Ben just talked about. So you've got your 5 spots on the floor: wing, corner, top. That's where guys stand the most. And then the rim, right? The rim is king. So you got the 5 space spots. That's where the most shots come from, because that's where everyone goes stands. Yeah. Any other questions? Any other questions? No. All right, we're good. Nelson?